going to call the meeting to order for the BZA meeting held Wednesday, May 26th. If we would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Give a brief explanation of the order of business tonight. What it will be is we'll hear from the staff the presentation of what the BZA, whatever the appeal is. Once the presentation has been made, then we'll call the applicant up and they'll give their introduction to the project. And then we'll ask for anyone from the audience whether either for or against the project. And then we'll close the public portion. We'll then ask questions from the board, and then at that point, we may call you back up to the podium, and then at that point, we'll vote on it as to how we'll decide, and it'll either be approved or denied tonight. As far as we were going to do a swearing in would be the next thing. So anyone that plans on speaking this evening, if you please stand and raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth before the Board of Zoning Appeals, say I do.
I do.
All right, thank you. Everyone that is going to be speaking this evening did sign in, correct? I see 3 names, so I think we're good. All right, so for the first...
You need to do the roll call.
Yeah, we need to do roll call, you're right. Thank you.
Mr. Bartold?
Here.
Mr. Hill? Mr. Reinger?
Here.
Mr. Shep?
Present.
Mr. Roberto?
Present. And we are calling an alternate.
Mr. Weiskopf will sit in Mr. Hill's space.
So Mr. Hill is absent, and we have an alternate filling in for that position. Okay? Mr. Weiskopf. All right, so our first case for this evening would be BZA 2021-2 is a request for a variance to allow outside merchandise storage in the front yard. The location is 11865 Hamilton Avenue. Is a former Marsh grocery store. The applicant and owner is Scott Freach on behalf of AMM Land. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do.
Great.
This is the former Marsh Grocery. It's located near the intersection of Kemper and Hamilton Avenue. This is on the very eastern border of Colerain Township. The other side of Hamilton Avenue is Springfield Township. This grocery store has been vacant for a number of years. We've had a number of people interested in looking at this. Tonight's current applicant is looking to do a retail and wholesale sale of building materials, primarily roofing at this location. As you can see by the aerial, it's bounded to the west by single-family residential. To the north, there's a car wash, there's a speedway under construction, a used car lot to the south, and the Pleasant Run School is also to the south. Further to the north is actually zoned industrial along Hamilton Avenue, but has a mixture of retail uses as well. This is an aerial photograph of the site. You'll notice that the property boundary eats somewhat into the parking lot of this, and I think some of you may recall that the Board of Zoning Appeals looked at that redevelopment of the Speedway, and they looked to expand on the property. One of the things that we looked at the time the Speedway expanded was what the impact would be on parking for the Marsh building, and it was determined that that parking lot was way oversized for what was needed for that building, so taking away the parking for Speedway was no problem at all. The zoning on this is B2, which is general business. The zoning surrounding to the south and to the west is single-family residential. As you can see, industrial to the north, Springfield Township on the east. This is the development plan that was submitted. They proposed to have outdoor storage at this location. Outdoor storage is permitted, but it has to be in the side or the rear of the building. This particular case, they do have some that's on the side. That's not necessarily in question. What is in question is only the part that's shaded on this drawing, and that's the part that is in the front yard setback. Those two areas that I have circled, those are permitted outdoor storage areas. And this is what we're looking at tonight, is that particular area. What I looked at is in the B2 zone, the minimum setback for a building in that zone is only 50 feet from the right-of-way. This particular building is about 375 feet back, so it is substantially further back from the right-of-way than what a building could be. And you can also see that the proposed outdoor storage also would comply with that building setback requirement by quite a bit. I think it's about 180 feet back from the right-of-way as proposed. Again, the aerial photograph showing about where that outdoor storage would be. It's not directly in front of the building, it's somewhat off to the side, offset. I think we'd probably have a little bit more concern if it was directly in front of the building. But as I'll state later, staff really has no major concerns. This is a street view of the building, and as you can see, it is considerable distance, more than a football field, back from the right-of-way. It was difficult to actually get photographs because the property is currently being used for staging for the construction of the Speedway. This was Speedway just a few days ago. They have the canopy in and the pad is poured for the building itself. Another view of the building. The area in the foreground would pretty much be where that outdoor storage would be. This is looking at it from Kemper Road, just to give you another view of the building. That paved area between the building and the grass, that would be outdoor storage in the side yard setback. This is kind of the wooded area behind the building. There are single-family houses directly beyond that wooded area. In terms of the zoning resolution, outdoor storage of merchandise is permitted only in the side and rear yard of the building in the B2 as regulated by section 12.10.6C. While the front yard is defined as the area between the principal building and the street, that's section 16.2, the minimum front yard setback in B2 is 50 feet, that's 8.3.1. Existing building is about 375 feet from Hamilton Avenue. The proposed outdoor storage is about 180 feet from Hamilton Avenue. And the proposed 4-foot tall fence around the perimeter of that storage area is allowed within the zoning. The side, they can go up to 6 feet, but they're only proposing 4 feet in the front. The criteria for variances, and this is for all variances, the board shall not be authorized to grant a variance for use that is otherwise prohibited in the zoning district and the property is located. That is not the case with this request. B, the board may authorize variance when such variance will not be contrary to the public interest or owing to special conditions. A literal enforcement of the resolution will result in unnecessary hardship. So as the spirit of the resolution shall not be observed and substantial justice done. That's kind of a tough test, but I think this particular building has been vacant for some time, not for lack of marketing. It's just trying to find the right use with this particular building at this particular location has been a little bit of a challenge. C, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose such conditions and restrictions upon the property benefited by the variance as the Board of Zoning Appeals may deem necessary to comply with the standards set forth in this section to reduce or minimize the impact of such variance upon other properties in the neighborhood and to further the purpose and intent of this resolution. I do have a recommendation that includes conditions that hopefully address this review criteria. D, the granting of a variance shall not be authorized unless the Board of Zoning Appeals finds that such variance from the provisions or requirements of the resolution will not be contrary to public interest and owing to special conditions pertaining to the specific piece of property. The literal enforcement of the provision requirements of this resolution would cause unnecessary hardship. The Board of Zoning Appeals may attach conditions, as in the previous thing, regarding the location, character, and other features of the proposed structure or use as it may deem necessary to further the interests and furtherance of purposes of the resolution in the public interest. No variance shall be considered or granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals which would allow a change of use of the parcel, and that is not the case in this situation. The findings are, number one, the variance requested is substantial since the proposed storage is entirely within the front yard setback of the building. The proposed setback of the storage is about 130. I think it's more like 180. I put 130 in here for some reason. Back from the right-of-way, and the minimum required setback for a building in the B2 zoning district. The granting of the variances would grant a consideration that's not available to other properties in the neighborhood. Number three, the property in question would likely yield a reasonable return without the variance. The property can reasonably be used as a retail business within the limits of the zoning regulations. Number four, the granting of the variance would probably not have a negative impact on neighboring property, but would create a precedent to allow for other front yard storage if requested by other neighboring properties. Number five, the approval of the variance would not affect the delivery of governmental services. Number six, there's no unusual topographic or site configuration issues related to this property which would prevent the reasonable application of the setback regulations. That one is a little, I kind of thought afterwards, the fact that they put the building almost all the way to the very back of the property limits the amount of space on the site for outdoor storage. There's like no room behind the building. There's some limited space on the side, but the majority of this site is all front yard, which is somewhat a consideration. And by taking into consideration the benefits to the applicant, if the variances are granted, is weighed against the potential detriment to the health, safety, welfare of the neighborhood and broader community, staff finds that substantial justice would be done by granting the variances for the front yard setback. Therefore, the recommendation is for approval of a variance from section 12.10.6C, subject to conditions. Number one, that the outdoor storage be confined to the areas outlined on the site plan. Number two, that the storage be kept in neat and orderly fashion and contain only building material merchandise for sale and no waste materials. Number three, that the perimeter fence be maintained in good condition. Number four, that the storage be at least 180 feet from Hamilton Avenue right-of-way. And number six, that other provisions for outdoor storage in section 12.10.6 shall apply.
Any questions for staff? Any questions for staff? I see none. Is the applicant present? Would you like to come make a presentation? Make sure the microphone's on and state your name and address for the record, please.
Check. Scott Fritsch. Our corporate location address is 327 East Wyoming Avenue, Laughlin, Ohio, 45215. Mr. Kohler did a nice job explaining the presentation there. It's absolutely what we're looking for as far as the setback of the building. Pretty much inhibits doing business out of there just because of the rear has very little, if any. It's so far off the road that before we applied for the zoning to maybe get a little bit additional storage to the left side of the building, and initially, hopefully grow from there, and we do got plans set in place as growth does happen to maybe put an addition off that we had drawn up, but you know, we like the location based upon the business that we do out there with building products, and which would serve neighboring communities. We're currently would be moving from Springdale into Colerain Township to do business. We'd appreciate consideration to moving some of our business into Colerain from Springdale. So that's, unless you got any other further questions, that's
We'll get to the questions in a minute. So at this point, we're just doing presentations.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else speaking for the appeal? Anyone speaking against? I see none. Can I have a motion to close the public portion?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? See none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Yes.
Mr. Shep,
Yes.
Mr. Weiskopf,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. Okay, so we'll start off with Mr. Weiskopf. You're the newest to the board this evening. You got any questions for our applicant or for the staff?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay. So if you come back up here if you don't mind, and we'll hang tight there for a bit.
I guess just my question is, it's in the staff findings that that space would just be used for storage. I feel like, not necessarily in this township, but some of the bigger box stores take that stuff out and maybe just take over their parking structure and use that as storage as well, like during the day, like just, you're gonna use that specifically for storage and go in and out of that just to get product out, not take it out and showcase it, you know, throughout like the parking lot?
No, we don't do anything in reference to other distribution centers that might do some of our business, like the Lowe's and Home Depot, where we wouldn't have skids of mulch and that type of seasonal stuff. Our stuff is basically, nowadays it's more like we can't get material, so I wish we could. So, but yeah, our stuff, we don't want it out for theft reasons, so we keep it behind a fence. So
Okay.
Mr. Bertle?
Just in general, like, can you describe the business? Like, I'm trying to envision, obviously, there's no public probably coming to the building, is there?
yes, we actually, just a brief history. It's my 28th year with Moeller Distributors. It's been around since 1875, family-owned business. So we're probably one of the oldest businesses I know of with independent businesses across the country and in Canada. So we supply roofing, siding, windows. We do retail, builders, contractors, homeowners. So absolutely, we'll have a showroom on the inside that homeowners could come and look at and pick up gutter or whatever. it
Or
might
look
be.
at shingles or any of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's a mix of probably contractors and the general public.
Yeah, the big bulk of our business is contractor related. Just
Yeah.
most homeowners don't get on their roof, so there's a few of them, but we do sell to the public. So
Yeah, I was just curious about like truck traffic. I guess there's nothing about semis, or, I mean, it's no different than if it was a grocery store with semis
Right.
delivering product, so.
Mhm.
So the
There would be-
stuff that's outside is there a height limit to how high they can store stuff?
6 feet.
Oh, is it? Okay. All right, that's all.
Mr. Shep?
Yeah, so you can store 6 feet, but I understand the fence is 4 feet? And it's gonna be constructed of the fence?
yeah, it's
What's your fence made out of?
a black aluminum, just decorative type fence that's going to have a landscape berm that I think you can see on there. That's a little bit of barrier around that area for good visual appearance from the street.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go after that fence a little more. It's 4 feet and your skid height is 6 feet. Is it an opaque fence? Can you see through it, or like a solid fence, or is it like chain link?
We're not going to do chain link. Our product height, a normal skid sits this high, so it's probably no more, it's not more than 4 feet high. So to go above double stacking that, it would go above the regulations of 6 feet. But that's why we're gonna landscape the front of it. If we do use, I mean, a 4-foot fence isn't gonna be very protective of anything. So, I mean, we were planning on just using a decorative black, typical rail fence that you see, and then landscape some of it in front of it for visual, so you can't see it. But again, the fencing is,
It's insignificant.
yeah.
Okay, so the fencing really isn't to secure the product, only to screen from the road. I mean, 4 feet of rail fence is easily overcome.
We have 10-foot fence with barbed wire in some of our locations, and they make a 4-foot hole. So it's only there to keep a truck from backing up to it and easily accessing it. We've installed super high-end security that we plan on to doing our security with infrared type stuff within the location for that type stuff. But it's just to keep people from driving up to it. And
Loading up.
yeah.
Do you anticipate any storage on either side of the structure? I mean, you're located in front, there is some small spaces on each side, east and west or north, south. Do you anticipate doing any storage in those areas? And if you do, will those also be fenced?
Yes, if you look at the, pull that up. Yeah, you see there. Those two areas would have storage as well as needed behind a fence.
They're also fenced,
All fenced in area.
all the same style fence?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
So as I interpret this drawing, this is not going to be attached to the building, right? This storage area, is it attached to the building?
It probably would touch that front corner, yes. There's, what is that, where it says concrete pad? Right there. Yeah, number 8.
Yeah. So,
Just to kind of enclose it, so again, where you can't drive.
so my question then, Marty, I mean, isn't that just making it now in the front of the building? It's attached to the building, therefore the front of the building is now just the front of the building.
It's outdoors. This is not a structure.
Okay, so it's just an eave overhang patio sort of thing, or just?
No, it's
There's
totally
no structure
open.
at all? So-
Totally open.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they had attached a structure to this building, would this been permittable?
Yes.
There's your workaround, so. Okay. I have no other questions.
One more question for staff. Under recommendations, are we allowed to include something to the effect that if there's a new owner, they have to go through the process again, or forever and ever there could be storage out
Yeah,
there?
variances carry with the property.
Yeah, but I mean, we
if it's
can't
sold.
stipulate.
No, we actually cannot stipulate ownership.
Okay.
It would change if the use of the building changed. If they became a retailer of something other than building materials,
Well,
then this would not apply because you're approving it only for building materials.
And I mean, in this
Well, if you-
instances, all you're putting up is a fence anyway, and they're just storing product, just like Home Depot does now, probably without a variance. So, I mean, there's nothing structurally there that,
no, I'm just thinking, if they leave 10 years from now and somebody moves in and it's, I don't know what, but if it's something detrimental to the neighborhood, we've allowed that something to be stored in the front of the building. It's just,
it's a valid point.
but you're gonna be there for a long time, so.
I still got a lot of years ahead of me, so I hope so. And plus, I mean, we look forward to, I'm getting out of leases, and that's what I want to do. I want to be permanent locations where we're established for a long time, so.
Great, it's good to hear. Any other questions? Anybody have a recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as presented, including the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second has been made. Any discussion? I see none. Marty, you ready for a roll call?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Shup,
Aye.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Weisskopf,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to
I
Colerain Township.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're closing Friday.
Very good. I've been through that property. You got a lot of rewiring to do.
Yes, we've got a lot to do.
Okay, the next applicant is BZA 2021-3, is a request for a change for non-conforming use, office daycare in the R6 residential district. The location is at 2974 Compton Road. Applicant and owner is Cincinnati Equity LLC on behalf of the owner Ronald and Mary, I'm going to butcher this name, Emge. And from one of our members has a conflict of interest in this, so he's asking to recuse himself. So Mark Shupp is going to recuse himself from this particular application. Okay, you are recused, sir. Okay, does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do.
Great.
His property is located on the north side of Compton Road between Colerain Avenue and Pippin. This is an aerial photograph. It was built as an office building in the early 1960s. The building predates zoning in Colerain Township. Before that time, we did not regulate land use, so an office building could be built in an otherwise residential neighborhood. I had been told anecdotally, I'm not going to swear to it, that that was a physician's office that was owned by the property owner in the White House next door. And those remained under the same ownership and not until not terribly long ago. The property is zoned R6, which is a single-family residential zone. It's completely surrounded by R6 zoning. It's also completely surrounded by single-family dwellings. So it's kind of an island of office and an otherwise residential area. The previous use of this was an office building. The proposed use is to change to a daycare operation. These are some photographs that were submitted with the application. These are some photographs that I took about a week ago. It is a kind of contemporary office building. One of the things that we look at with non-conforming uses, if they're ever damaged or destroyed, they cannot be rebuilt with the same use. This would have to be rebuilt as a single-family house. If it ever became severely deteriorated, abandoned, obviously abandoned, again, it would have to revert to single-family. But the problem with this particular building is there's some practical difficulties to convert the existing structure to a single-family dwelling. So the matter is that the board, and I'll go through the regulations, can make decisions to change that use category. Another view, they propose to maintain that existing monument sign, just reface it. As you can see, the property to the west has a privacy fence along their backyard, as does a couple of those property owners. This is the property to the east, it's separated by a hedge. Another view of that house to the west. This is looking from the back of the site across Compton Road. There's a couple single-family houses across the street. This is looking to the west property line. There is one house that does not have a privacy fence but does have a fence. The back of the yard is somewhat wooded, overgrown. I think you saw from the aerial, it's almost like the whole back quarter of the property is wooded. In the regulations, in residential zones, there is a provision for daycare centers, but it's only allowed in the R7 zone classification, which is multifamily zone, and this is a single-family zone. Also, in the residential zones, all residential zones, we can have what's called a Type B family care home. That's like a in-house childcare where you primarily have a single-family house, but they can have up to 6 people for daycare in that structure. Anything over 6 in Colerain Township, that goes over to a commercial zone. Daycare center, this is just the definition. It's just for providing, care for kids. It can be also nursery schools. It can be adult daycare. In this, just to show you on the business side, in most business categories, daycare centers are permitted. Non-conforming uses, this is the section or the provision under which we're reviewing this application. 11.7.3 says if no structural alterations are made, any non-conforming use of a structure or the structure and land in combination may, upon appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals, be changed to another non-conforming use, provided that the board shall find that the proposed use is equally appropriate or more appropriate to the district than the existing non-conforming use. In permitting such changes, the Board of Zoning Appeals may require appropriate conditions and safeguards in accord with other provisions of the zoning resolution. Again, the flexibility is you can impose conditions to try to make this as compatible as possible to the surrounding neighborhood. Staff's finding is that the proposed use is equal appropriate to or more appropriate to the district than the existing non-conforming use. The staff recommendation is for approval of the change of non-conforming use subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the use be limited to the proposed use as stated in the application, and that any change in use shall not be undertaken without the consent of the Colerain Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Number two, that the use complies with the regulations and recommendations of applicable development review agencies. For instance, child care centers in Ohio have to be licensed through the state. They have to be inspected by our fire marshal, and there's a whole other gamut that they need to go through. Number three, that outdoor storage be prohibited. Number four, that hours of operation be from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and weekends on emergency basis only. I picked that parameter only because we have used it several years ago for another similar situation. So you may consider some flexibility on that depending on what the applicant needs. So the staff's recommendation is for approval subject to those. What's interesting about our code, like with variances, we have a whole slew of findings that you have to make. This finding is basically very simple. Is it more appropriate or as compatible as the previous use?
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I see none. Is the applicant present? Would you come make your presentation, please?
Well, I appreciate the time to come and speak with you. My name is Jake Meinzer. So I'm not the owner of the property. I am a commercial real estate agent who has the property under contract. A little bit of a history on it. So I've actually shown the building prior to me having under contract several times. And each time I saw it, I liked it more and more, but I guess to my benefit now, none of my clients ended up liking it. They wanted it for more retail purposes, and we found very quickly that that is not currently allowed. So time kind of went on, and it occurred to me more and more, the property stayed on the market. It's been on for several years now, that it really seemed like a quality property that had a lot of potential to it. So what I ended up doing, I spoke with the now listing agent and got it under contract with essentially a contingency that I could market it for a lease during a particular period of time, a couple of months. She was very excited to move forward with that, or he at the time. Unfortunately, Ron has now passed away this past month. But about 90% of my calls were for either retail uses or daycares, things of that nature. I had one or two that were wanting to use it as an office space. And that was the original risk that I saw. Just with the way that things are going, office space is just easy to come by and no one really wants to lease it right now, unfortunately. So after some time, poured through applications, I found what was the strongest, and it's a daycare, and they're very excited to move in here. I really love Colerain Township. I'm excited to be able to move forward with you guys if you would allow the use, and I'm happy to take any questions when the time comes. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Anyone else speaking in behalf of this appeal? Anyone speaking on behalf, sir? Okay.
On behalf of just a citizen,
Are you for it or against it?
neither, but I would just like to express my concerns.
Then you can address it and give me your name and address for the record.
My name is Tim Robertson, and I live at 9218 Burgess Drive, which is an adjacent property.
Okay.
And I'm
Thank you.
very sorry to hear about Ron. He was a good friend of mine and a fellow neighbor. And I can confirm that that building and the house next to it on the right was a doctor's office, because our family has lived there since 1966. So we've been there a long time. It's been very peaceful, quiet, residential neighborhood the whole time. And if you just look at that picture right there, you can see where the grass, this just caught my attention when you brought this up, or when you showed this. But right where the grass ends, that's like a sharp decline into a creek bed, which is probably 20 feet down, and the whole backyard has a sharp slope to it from the front, right behind the building, or where the pavement is, to the back. So I mean, it's a tough area to be building, any playground sets, anything like that. And once you get back to that, right after the grass, I mean, that is almost non-usable. So I just wanted to point out to you something like that to consider. And like I said, our family has been here since the 60s. Now, I don't know if you've ever been around that curve right there. Have you ever been there? That is a dangerous S-curve right there. There was a major wreck Saturday. It blocked that whole intersection for 2 hours. There was another wreck there last night that blocked one section of Pippin Road. There's a bus stop right there. I'm just saying, for the safety of the kids, this must be considered, okay? That's just something I wanted to bring up. And also, I know you were talking about leasing it, but it just seems to me that they're trying to speed this up. And I don't know if this would be a private run facility. What type of facility? Is it going to be for actual little kids? And that's another thing I wanted to bring up to consider, what type it might be. And another thing also, one last thing I maybe wanted to bring up, is just the property value. Our family has lived there for a long time, and now all of a sudden, if I wanted to sell, my mother recently passed away, and I've been trying to get the house in order, and if I wanted to sell the house, I mean, as a daycare center, how's that going to affect my property value? So those are just a couple issues that I wanted to bring up let everybody think about those things before they actually make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to speak for or against the appeal? I see none. Can I have a motion to close the public portion?
So move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? See none. Roll call vote, please, to close the public portion.
Mr. Bertel,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Weisskopf,
Yes.
Mr.
Roberto.
Bartold.
Oh, I thought you already did me.
Did I? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. And Mr. Herbert. That's right, we got 4. I'm counting, sorry.
I get you. Yes. So the public portion has been closed. All right. We will do same order as last time. So, Mr. Wyckoff, you got any questions for the applicant? Or anybody, for that matter?
I guess maybe for the applicant, since he brings up a good point.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, mine. Can you hear me? Maybe not.
Should be a green light.
It's on green.
Perfect.
Is it for children of all ages, basically like K through?
Yeah, so it's set up in a particular way, where they kind of have to have designated space for each age group. So there will be some infants, some toddlers, and then there'll be one small room. I don't know if you've been in the property, but there's a smaller room in the back left, which would probably have a computer or so in there, and it'd be for maybe a slightly older, like teenage.
Okay. And then what about any type of fencing is probably the, you know, like is that gonna, there's some be fencing?
So I actually appreciate bringing up that aspect. As a property owner, my utmost concern, even when I was talking with the applicants, is to make sure that the children are safe. There are regulations in place through the state of Ohio. If there's an outdoor play area, which is required, it does have to be fenced off. There's designated amounts of eyes that have to be on the children at all times. It is definitely taken into consideration. So that's the utmost,
Sure.
Especially from my perspective and the owner's perspective, or of the daycare itself, that be taken care of. No children would be in the front. Everything that would be in the rear of the building as far as play space.
Okay, nothing for me.
No further?
good, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bartle?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, like Mr. Kohler mentioned, the state of Ohio will be involved for any kind of regulations related to playgrounds and whatnot. Obviously, they can't be on a sloped hill, probably. So any items needing to be addressed to get your license, to have a daycare center would be
Sure.
addressed.
Yep.
And so you did say it's like any other daycare center, right? Like
Yeah, pretty straightforward, nothing
for-profit
unique
daycare
about
center.
it. Yeah.
No, I don't think I have any questions.
Mr. Reiniger?
I think you mentioned in your presentation that the daycare center will meet the licensing requirements for whatever organization does that.
Sure. Yes.
Second question, the play space that you mentioned obviously is going to be fenced. Will part of it be on the asphalt or will all of it be in the grass?
They do plan to utilize some of the asphalt. She has some like toys that they can ride around on, so that will probably be part of it. They're still trying to determine, because the state of Ohio won't come in and look at the space until after you have the zoning approval to even talk about it. So once we have that information, they can come in and designate how much of the asphalt or how that would be fenced off. I know that doesn't really answer the question, but yes and no. It will have a portion of the asphalt sectioned off and fenced.
And that riding surface would be fenced also?
Correct.
So so wherever the children are outside, they're enclosed?
Correct.
Okay. Second question, will you plan or does the operator plan to install additional outside lighting?
That has not been discussed. No, not as of right now, no additional outside lighting. There is one light on a help and pull out back, the front lighting, and then there's the lit sign, the monument sign out front.
And that monument sign is the only signage that's going to be used for this use?
There may be a sign on the door, but otherwise that would be the only signage. No, nothing else would be erected, so.
Are they going to change colors of the trim?
Yeah, I would plan to paint it like a gray or something a little bit more appealing than the bluish purple that it is now.
The building is empty now?
Correct. Yeah, it's been vacant for a few years now.
Is it HVAC or whatever, is it operational inside? I mean,
All in working order, recently replaced.
Okay.
Really great condition building.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So how many children are they proposing to have on the property?
Should be around 25, but that's, again, the state regulates it based on square footage, and some things they accept, some things don't. So like bathroom space doesn't count, kitchen space doesn't count, and it kind of depends on how they take in their own calculations, but it should be around 25.
So that building's that large? Because it looks pretty.
1,700 square feet.
Okay.
And you need around, I think it's 35 square foot per child.
Okay. And there's no issues about getting infants outside, I'm seeing, because
No, the
I know there's,
infant room would be, if you're looking at the building from the front, it'd be on the left because it has two ways of
egress.
yeah, correct.
Yeah, I've gone through this myself, so.
Fun.
And then, as far as addressing the concern of, my recommendation, I mean, you guys manage it how you want, but that grass area that's next to the building would be the ideal spot for a playground area, I would suspect.
If that would be allowed, I'd have no problem with it as long as it's fenced off and, like I said, the children are safe, then.
Yeah, then it's attached to the building, and they're not having to go across a parking lot could
Right.
potentially get hit. And then the restrictions that are being applied, the 6 to 6, is that gonna be an issue?
So part of her business model, she would like to stay open until 10. Obviously, children would be sleeping, but it's kind of to service those parents that are on later shifts in the evening. If that was a deal breaker, we could certainly work around it, but that was her initial plan.
All right, I don't have any other further questions. Anybody have any proposals?
Well, do we,
The one you mentioned, she wants to stay open till 10 o'clock. Is this, I mean, will the 6 to 6 shut the whole operation down? I mean,
It was something I discussed with her when we were first looking at the property, because she was asking what time, and I said, I would imagine it's probably going to be restricted to like a 6 to 6 time frame. And that, I believe, is okay, but if possible, she does have clients who would like to have their children there longer. They would be sleeping. It wouldn't be like they're out playing outside and making noise, but if possible, if we could change that, that would be useful.
Well, my thought on the 6 to 6 timeframe is if you're making them get out there at 6 o'clock, now you've put them in a prime time traffic, trying to get the children out of that. And so they're stopping at 5 to 5:30 to go in to get their children out of that daycare. You're now causing an issue on the road that Mr. Roberts brought up. That's, I think if you did a more off-time recommendation, this is my board, you can decide how you want, but that would help ease that stopping the traffic on that road if you had a time that was later than 6.
well, but, I mean, the parents are gonna wanna go there when they need to go there based on
On an
dropping off
individual
kids
basis.
before they go to work or whatever,
Sure. But we're saying that they have to stop at 6
PM, you're saying,
PM. So that means you're gonna be picking their children up between 5:30 and
which
5:40.
is rush hour.
Which is, peak traffic time.
Well, if the 6 to 6 is approved and they need it to change based on 2 years from now, just the operation of the facility, is it gonna be a hard thing for them to get a new time period approved?
They would have to apply for additional change.
Through
And this
us?
board would have to approve that. And again, the 6 to 6 I put in there, thinking more along the lines that this was an office building previously.
Right. And trying to
What
stick
were
along
the
the same.
normal hours of operations, and are the neighbors used to seeing traffic coming in and out of this site at a certain time? And is it gonna cause neighborhood disturbances, having traffic coming in and out of the site at different hours?
I personally think an 8 o'clock timeframe is a better stop time. At 10 o'clock, that's a struggle for me, because now you're getting in during the noise hours that potentially could be an issue for the neighbors, and we gotta keep them in consideration. But if I had my druthers, that'd be my recommendation, to change it from 6 to an 8 PM.
I was thinking 9 PM, but
Yeah.
do we have 7:30? So I mean,
Go ahead and make your recommendation, and I don't have a problem with 9. 10 was just, I thought we were too late.
yeah. We're to the point of making a motion?
I think, unless anybody else have any discussion that they want to talk about it, then that's what we need, either a motion to approve or deny.
Can I rebut or say anything else?
Public portion has been closed, sir.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the change of the non-conforming use, subject to the staff recommendations, with the exception for item number 4, to change the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay, motion's been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? See none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Weiskopf,
Yes.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. So it's been carried and approved.
Thank you.
All right, so next, we have no unfinished business. We need to approve the minutes. We have two sets of minutes that we need to approve. We have the March 24th, 2021. Can someone want to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
And I think by default, I'm going to have to second it, so I'll second it. Any discussion? See none, roll call vote, please.
Again, keep in mind, this is really a procedural
I know.
accepting. We do need a majority vote.
Okay,
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Weiskopf,
yes.
Mr.
No,
Roberto.
Oh, Mr. Weiskopf, sorry.
Weiskopf,
Yes.
you voted yes, okay.
And yes.
Mhm.
All right, and the next one, approval of minutes would be for December 16th, 2020.
Yeah, I wasn't here for that meeting.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
and I was here again, so I will second that. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
He's
I
abstaining.
abstain.
abstain. Mr. Weiskopf,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes. The next meeting is to be announced. Do we have one next month?
Yes. I did put to be announced. Yes, we do have a case.
Okay. So the next date will be,
You have a case.
all right, we'll get a packet.
That would be June 23rd.
So June 23rd will be our next meeting. Any administrative matters?
No.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
And it's seconded?
I'll second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bartold,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Weiskopf,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes, adjourned.